to the cloud so I can export it to my computer for now.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. If we need any help with recording, also happy to do so. Great. So we saw a couple of new folks just trickling in. Welcome, welcome. We're about to get started. For those that are just coming in, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat with your name, pronouns, if you are a part of any organization, and where you are in the state. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jalissa. I am with MILPA, which is the Movement of Immigrant Leaders in Pennsylvania, part of the Poor People's Campaign. As today, we're just going to go a little bit over to begin with just some overviews of the course. And from there, we will start our education with everyone. So for those that don't know, this is actually, I know folks may have seen that it would be a two-part education. We have extended it to a three-part education just because there is so many components to nonviolent direct action. So today we will start with a little bit of history and theory. Next, it's not next Monday, but the Monday after, Monday, June 2nd, it will be specifically focused on messaging. The Monday after that, we would be talking about the practice, how to make sure we plan for an action specifically and effectively. So a three-part series, and we will discuss a couple of the goals that we want to focus on. Specifically, we want to make sure that we are coming out of this course, that all of you are able to define what strategic nonviolence and nonviolent civil disobedience is. Also, situate this course in with our work within a history of the working class struggle. I want to make sure that during this process, we're also building up our leaders and our relationships with each other. We know the base of everything is leadership development. So want to make sure to also focus on that and also to demystify the arrest process, excuse me. Some of the skills that we want everyone to come out of here today, outside of this course in this three-course process are the following. I'm just going to start them off like this. We're hoping that this course will help you become clear about why nonviolent direct action can be effective, specifically as a tactic. We want to make sure that there is ability for everyone outside of this course to be competent enough to plan and help participate in a nonviolent direct action, confident enough to force these encounters with the public and private power holders, and also be committed to engaging in nonviolent struggle and being a leader in ongoing statewide nonviolent campaigns. So I want to start us off as our welcoming, or what we have called a mística, just to kind of ground us for today. Specifically, this is a video that we are about to watch from the relaunching of the Poor People's Campaign that happened in 2018. So 50 years after the original Poor People's Campaign. It was 6 weeks of action, which we again have called the relaunching of the Poor People's Campaign. This week specifically that we're going to watch this video of was week 5, focused on jobs, education, and housing. Again, the grounding of all of this, we want to make sure that throughout all of these processes, we also develop leaders within the Poor People's Campaign. And it's what brought us all together as a coordinating team, and how, again, in Pennsylvania, we were able to relaunch this Poor People's Campaign. Reverend Barber has called this the largest sustained period of civil disobedience in U.S. history. So just to give us a little bit of information about that, we will start the video.
Awesome. Thanks, Jalissa. I'm going to play the video now. Just if folks could let me know if they could hear it, that'd be great.
On which side are you on? 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 They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. You'll either be a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair. Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you scam or will you be a man? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Oh, which side are you on? Which side are you on? Oh, which side are you on? Come all of you good workers, good news to you I'll tell of how the poor people's campaign has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 My mama was a worker, she's in the clubs and when I'm with this campaign, I know that she is there. Which side are you on? 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 This side are you on? My daddy was a fireman, and I was the son, and I think later you to live where I was going. Which side are you on? 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 Again. Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you
This is the quickest way to clear out stuck poop.
Thank you, Andrea. Welcome everyone who's just coming in. Thank you all. I know there's a couple of folks that have just started trickling in. Please rename your Zoom if you haven't already with your name, and also introduce yourself in the chat with your name, pronoun, and if you're part of any organization. We are just getting started with some grounding exercises for today, covering a video of a prime example of nonviolent direct action. So for those who might not be aware, this is an example. And our next slide, we are actually going to take a poll with everyone's experience with nonviolent direct action. So you'll see something pop up on your screen in just a couple of minutes. If you have a little bit of experience, somewhat have had experience, you're not very familiar, or you are very familiar, maybe you've already been arrested. So we'll talk about all of that a little bit more, but wanted to hear from our audience today where the room is already. So I see folks trickling in. Good amount. I think that's everyone, right? And 19 out of 19. Great. All right. Thank you so much. Oh, actually, it looks like we have a couple more folks. 19 of 27. So we're waiting for a couple more folks to answer. It looks like this group is mostly somewhat familiar, which is great. We can definitely build on top of that. And for those that are not familiar at all, don't worry. We will try to get down to the basics as well. Before I pass it over, I just want to, I sent a message to both iPhone, and there's a number on, like, you entered with your number starting in 334. If you could please respond to my message or change your name yourself on your Zoom, just so we are aware of who's in the room. Just for privacy protection reasons, we want to make sure everyone is here and able to be on. So again, please just respond to that message or change your name. And with that being said, I'm really glad to be here with you all today, and I'm going to pass it to Michael.
That's the first time I've seen that video. That's pretty darn powerful. I hadn't seen that before. So I'm reluctant to resort to talk of war. We are in a mighty struggle, and we have to acknowledge that the forces of evil are powerful. The people who poison our air and our water, deny us housing and health care, saddle us with debt, and make nutritious food scarce, spend trillions of dollars on war, and demonize those fleeing from war zones. They have deep pockets and armies backing them up. We will not outspend them. We won't outmight them either, but we can outmaneuver them. Strategic nonviolence is a tactic for our time, for our place and conditions. Strategic nonviolence makes no moral judgments about whether or not violence is ever appropriate. We can't control what the police do, and they need no direct provocation from us to attack us or to let others attack us. Strategic nonviolence does not make us safe, but it does let us make clear decisions about what kind of actions we put ourselves at risk for. Next slide. So that's kind of a summary of what strategic nonviolence is. There's a whole bunch of different things, and we're going to get into those things. Next slide. Strategic nonviolence allows us to choose the right tool at the right time and the right place to engage. When confronting the forces of evil, we have many, many tools at our disposal. Next slide. We have acts of protest and persuasion. Here, we have people from the Poor People's Campaign and the Nonviolent Medicaid Army confronting power and shining a light on injustice. Next slide. Here we have two examples of non-cooperation. In this slide, we have an organic farmer and friends blocking an entrance to a well pad that was killing her livestock, and we have a group from March on Harrisburg blocking the entrance to a fundraiser for a politician. Next slide. This is direct action. We have members of the Poor People's Campaign. This is the video we just saw telling the governor that he must pass a moral budget. It's a launch. It's 40 days of action. Next slide. Here we have civil disobedience. The Gerhardts, who live in Huntington County, had a gas company try to put a pipeline through their property without their permission. So they ended up sitting up in trees for 2 years to stop that. Next slide. We know a lot about boycotts, and here we have a picture of folks, I think that's what this is, walking after Rosa Parks was arrested in Birmingham. They boycotted the city transit for over a year. Eventually, the city transit had to give in. Next slide. And here we have education. We can bring about change by educating people through strategic nonviolence. Here, the Poor People's Campaign is speaking out about injustice. Next slide.
Cool. I think I'm picking up here. Michael, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Nijmi Zakia Zarenko with the Pennsylvania Poor People's Campaign, Put People First PA, the Nonviolent Medicaid Army, the National Union of the Homeless. And I want to give an example tonight from the National Union of the Homeless. I think sometimes when we study nonviolence and look into nonviolent direct action, there's so many amazing examples from the civil rights movement, and that is awesome. And those examples should be studied. And then there's a lot of examples that we don't necessarily study in the same way. And so wanted to bring in an example from the National Union of the Homeless, the original National Union of the Homeless of the 80s and 90s was a massive organizing drive led by unhoused folks. We call it the poor organizing the poor, homeless people getting organized across this country. At one point, at its height, around 20,000 members of the homeless union. We have a new homeless union for today as well, but this is the original homeless union. And this is the 35th anniversary, this May 1st, of a coordinated housing takeover in 8 cities. So this was nonviolent civil disobedience, taking over empty houses that were owned by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And you can go to the next slide. That's one of the slogans you saw there. You only get what you're organized to take. It's actually the title of a new book by Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris and Noam Sandweiss Beck of the Kairos Center. Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris is also the co-chair, national co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign. And you only get what you're organized to take was one of the slogans of the original homeless union and the homeless union of today. And so I think this is another example that we want to bring in, and I'm going to speak about throughout this session tonight of coming into direct conflict with the state for our basic needs, to try to meet our basic needs. And so as the poor and dispossessed, we are being increasingly forced to actually break the law in order to survive, right? This is nothing new. It's always been a feature of life for us who are struggling to survive, and it's going to increase because the means to live are being taken away, and we're going to talk more about that. So this was an illegal housing takeover movement, and the person you see there is named Ron Casanova. He's saying it can be done if people take the initiative of breaking into these houses. Forget about it being against the law. I don't care. Hell, I'm dying in the streets. That should be against the law. So we know that in a system with its laws that are set up to enrich very, very few, while the majority of us are one paycheck or housing crisis or climate crisis away from poverty if we're not already in poverty, 140 million people in this country who are poor or near poor, those laws that are in place keep us that way. And so securing our needs and our rights means that that is coming into conflict with these existing laws and policies. And so this is where we are choosing and forced to take these kinds of actions to survive, nonviolent actions to survive. And you can go to the next one. And so, yeah, here again is the logo of the National Union of the Homeless. And these takeovers were following, there was an escalation actually following a huge march in DC and a meeting with Jack Kemp, who was then the head of the Housing and Urban Development. He promised the homeless union that he would set aside 10% of the housing stock of housing and urban development for unhoused people, but he broke that promise. And as a result, this takeover movement, which was long in planning and carrying out, it took a lot of work to do it. It wasn't just something that happened immediately. That was the escalation, was this coordinated series of takeovers. And as a result of these actions, the homeless union did gain some major concessions. They actually won multi-million-dollar housing programs in several cities. But there's a longer story of why they went into demise. But the homeless union has been resurrected. There's a new homeless union, just like there's a new Poor People's Campaign. And so the National Union of the Homeless is back. But this history of the housing takeovers, this coordinated series of takeovers 35 years ago, is not well known. And so we absolutely need to understand it and study it here in the Poor People's Campaign.
Hello, I'm Rabbi Michael Pollack, and I'm going to take us through the next couple of slides here. So let's talk about the Seattle General Strike. One grand act of nonviolence is to engage in strikes, and when strikes join together and grow in scale, they become a general strike. And in 1919, this is just a historical example of a great strike, the Great Seattle General Strike happened. And this was started in February 1919, and it started over low wages, but it spiraled and more unions called out, more workers stopped going to work, and very quickly it became a general strike. and the entire city became run by the workers, by the people. And they started doing things like setting up kitchens, and the kitchens were all you can eat with a low fixed price. They did trash pickup, they did elder care and child care, and essentially ran the city without the bosses. And they just ran it and showed that you can do that. They had incredibly low records of crime during this time period. It was incredibly safe. And they actually had an unarmed group called the Labor War Veterans Guard that was enforcing public safety through persuasive measures and not through violence. The strike ended up ending because for a couple of reasons. One was that the mayor assembled an army and ended the strike by threatening to shoot anyone who provided any services like trash pickup or food. The strikers were pretty organized enough to get that far and wage a general strike, and they had a common understanding that the workers should be running the business, that there should be democracy in the workplace, and that the bosses should not be making decisions because the decisions they make lead to starvation, wages, and suffering. But the workers, despite being organized, still fractured due to internal divisions, and they were also sabotaged by a siege of Seattle. Supplies were hard to get after a few days, and also pressure from external forces, including even some national labor bosses, some national union bosses. And on the next slide here, we're going to go into a quote from the mayor of Seattle. So this is the guy who broke the strike, and he describes the strike very accurately, though. He truly did understand it for what it was. He just disagreed with it. He was on the wrong side of it and hated it. He believed that the bosses and private property should be making all of the decisions. And so he wrote here, we can read this together. Sorry, one second. Sorry, my image is blurry. Give me one second, folks. He said that the so-called sympathetic Seattle strike was an attempted revolution, that there was no violence does not alter the fact. The intent openly and covertly announced was for the overthrow of the industrial system, here first, then everywhere. True, there were no flashing guns, no bombs, no killings. Revolution, I repeat, does not need violence. The general strike as practiced in Seattle is of itself the weapon of revolution, all the more dangerous because quiet. To succeed, it must suspend everything. That is to say, it puts the government out of operation, and that is all there is to revolt, no matter how achieved. Let's keep going through some more examples here. We're just giving a lot of examples in this first class as we kind of do an overview of nonviolent direct action. So a couple other examples here. March on Harrisburg, one of our Pennsylvania Poor People's Campaign member organizations. These are some pictures from some direct actions that March on Harrisburg has done. I'm going to point to just the one in the bottom left there. Actually, no, they speak for themselves. Yeah, these are some actions. In the bottom left was a Where's Waldo action, which was when the legislature decided to hide and actually cancel session to avoid voting on an anti-corruption bill. So we showed the injustice of them being corrupt and avoiding responsibility by showing up as Where's Waldo, creating a bit of a creative tension to put pressure on them. That ultimately led to the chairman stepping down and moving aside so that things could move. Let's keep going here. March on Harrisburg focuses on democracy and corruption issues. This is another member organization, Pennsylvania Action on Climate. The one on the right there, you can see the shadow of the Capitol reflected in the glass there. This is across the street from the state capitol at a fundraiser. Pennsylvania Action on Climate has disrupted fundraisers, and it was a fundraiser where fossil fuel lobbyists were giving large checks to public officials, to state senators and state representatives, bribing them. So Pennsylvania Action on Climate forced the encounter and disrupted that function, that flow of corruption, to highlight it and to frankly just stop it for a few hours. Pennsylvania Action on Climate was successful at that protest in just stopping the flow of money into politics for a few hours, just literally being in the way so it couldn't happen. Let's go to one more. Back in 2019, the Poor People's Campaign here fought to preserve general assistance. General assistance is a very minor on the budget welfare program that helps people who need a couple $100s in cash assistance just to live, to stay alive. And it's an incredible program that helps a lot of people. And they were cutting it back then in 2019. And so we forced the encounter. We actually ended up at the governor's house. Governor Wolf did not save it. The biggest concession we were able to extract from him was that he would reject the first offer that cut general assistance, but he must have accepted the second offer at the negotiating table because it was cut shortly thereafter. But through nonviolence, we were able to at least raise the profile, organize around it, and continue to grow. And we will bring back general assistance one day. That fight is not over by a long shot. I'm going to pass it back to Michael Badges-Canning. Well, Michael, you're on mute.
Okay, thanks for catching that. Yeah, I've been involved in things since 1968. In fact, I was just thinking that it was right around the start of the Poor People's Campaign, the original Poor People's Campaign. It inspired me, and during all that time, I did all the things that people are supposed to do when confronted with injustice. I wrote letters to my congressman. I worked on campaigns to elect the right candidates. I signed petitions. I went to rallies. I marched. I lobbied. I wrote letters to the editor. I knocked on doors. I made phone calls. I organized groups to fight back. I did everything I could think of. But I was always amazed that too often, in the end, the rich and the powerful got what they wanted, and the rest of us got screwed. Mountaintop removal was an issue that really fired me up and got me involved in something that changed my life. Mountaintop removal coal mining is a destructive practice that blows the top off a mountain and then pushes the top into the surrounding valleys to get to the coal underneath it. It poisons water, it destroys communities, it leaves an unstable wall that can fall down and cover up communities, and it ruins farmland. It also steals land from the people who own it, because even though they own the surface, the laws are written that allow companies to do whatever the hell they want to do with it to get to the coal underneath. It's a sick process. I participated in the March on Blair Mountain. This was a 52-mile march over several days from Marmot, West Virginia, to the top of Blair Mountain. People in southern West Virginia were recreating a miners' rebellion that occurred 90 years before in an attempt to stop that mountaintop removal of Blair Mountain. It was an intense week. The state, local governments, the state police, coal companies, some miners, not all miners, but some miners, some people in the community did everything they could do to make the march almost impossible. Even with a police escort, coal trucks drove extremely close to us at very high speeds. The fire companies blared their sirens and honked their horns while we were trying to sleep in tents. We were told that gunmen were coming to shoot at our camp. But the march got a ton of attention. It got bigger and bigger every day. There were over 1,000 people by the time we got to Blair Mountain. And because of that the direct action, that march, the coal company relented and spared Blair Mountain. So strategic direct action works.
Hey everyone, so we're now going to take just a 2 minute break. Thank you for sharing all that, Michael. That was very powerful. But we're going to take a 2 minute break, so we're going to come back here at 7:07. Yeah, see y'all in 2 minutes.
Okay, let's bring it back together. Hope everybody had a good 2 minute bio break, took care of any basic needs you needed to take care of there. And I'm going to ask people to put in the chat as you come back from break any experiences with nonviolent direct action that you've had. Anything that you want to share, any experiences you've had as we've gone through some examples. We're going to take the next few minutes to kind of go through what is a nonviolent direct action and really start to define some terms and get at a couple key characteristics of it. But first, if anybody just wants to share either in the chat or feel free to also come off mute if you want and just share any direct action stories you have, any experiences you've had, and what stood out from them. And maybe people don't have many experiences. Well, Robin, yep, you just did an action last week around the the hospital in Chester. Do you want to talk about that for a second? What that was like, what the experience was?
Oh, it was awesome. And a lot of the nurses were there, the workers. There were some members from the press. But I think the thing that really happened was the next day when the Governor Shapiro was there and somebody brought their baby that had stopped breathing because they didn't know that the hospital had closed. And thank God there were people there and they were able to save that baby. But had it been maybe a couple of weeks later, who knows what would have happened. It just very powerful, very loving, peaceful, and I love the nonviolent part of our actions because it's so important. So important to just keep it, loving and nonviolent. That it was beautiful. It really was. And there's some videos of it on Facebook. If anybody wants it, just hit me up in the chat and I'll make sure you get them. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Mary, Fran, in the chat there. Right, protest, organizing, movement building can stop a war. That's a really important thing to always remember. Wars especially seem hopeless sometimes, seem out of control, but we can stop them. We can make peace. Zevi, you've done some actions blocking traffic, right? Well done, well done. Bucks County Rally and Press Conference, yeah, well done, Mary. Right, actions come in all forms. There's a lot of variety to them, and let's kind of get into what is a nonviolent direct action. We're not going to give kind of a textbook definition here. We're going to talk about a couple characteristics of it that hold true for most nonviolent direct actions, but not necessarily for all. So first, right, nonviolence is not passive. It's not a passive acceptance of oppression. And it's also not a violent opposition to it. Nonviolence is a active, nonviolent opposition to oppression. It is not passive, it is deeply active. It is intense, it is in your face. The goal of nonviolence is to make peace in the world, right? We fight to make a better world. We try to make a better world. We try to solve problems. And nonviolence does use kind of the shared power of our common humanity, soul, truth, love. It's often, those are terms often associated with it. Soul force, truth force, love force to win peace, to win the world that we deserve, a world where everybody has a right to live. And examples of nonviolence: protests, non-cooperation, direct action, civil disobedience, boycotts, strikes, education, lots of different ways to do this. There are a million and one ways. So a couple things that characterize nonviolent direct actions are forcing the encounter, dramatizing the injustice, creative tension, and polarization. So forcing the encounter. Nonviolent direct action forces the encounter with the power structure that is oppressing us, whether it's occupying a legislative office, blocking a road to a weapons plant, disrupting a campaign fundraiser, engaging in a general strike. There is some sort of encounter that is generally happening with the power structure. This is a picture from a March on Harrisburg protest from a few years ago, where we directly encountered the Speaker of the House and we won a commitment to pass an anti-corruption bill. And the Speaker of the House, actually, in the picture after this one, tried to reach for that megaphone that Selba is holding, and Selba pulls the megaphone away from the Speaker of the House, and the Speaker of the House in that moment realized, holy crap, the people have the megaphone, and I need to listen, and actually had to respond, actually had to react and actually do something. It knocked him off the fence, and we'll come back to that idea in a second. Dramatizing the injustice. Nonviolent direct action dramatizes the injustice, forces the encounter, and highlights how awful and ridiculous the oppressive conditions are. They particularly highlight that the unjust law is designed to protect the ruling class and attack the working class. They highlight the evil, the harm, the damage that the law is doing. A couple examples that are pretty well known. Think about under Jim Crow, Black people had to sit in the back of the bus, which was just one injustice that was part of a much larger unjust white supremacist war against Black people. And part of winning peace and working to end that white supremacist war, or win a battle at least, was the Montgomery bus boycotts, when Rosa Parks sat in the front of the bus, and then that kicked off the bus boycott, which went on for 13 months. And through incredible organization, through outmaneuvering the Montgomery Sheriff's Department and the Alabama State Police, they were able to win integrated transportation in Montgomery, Alabama after 13 months of fighting. Another example people are familiar with is the Indian War struggle for independence against the British Empire. And one part of that, one particular injustice of that colonization, of that domination, of that oppressive regime was the salt monopoly. The British enforced a monopoly on salt and said, you're not allowed to make your own salt, as you've been doing for however long. You have to buy our salt at inflated monopoly prices, and it was a way to rob the poor and keep people oppressed. And so the Indian independence movement did a march to the sea, a salt march, and they marched to the sea and they made their own salt, highlighting that particular injustice, which was part of the much larger web of injustice that they were living under. This is a cartoon from an action here where March on Harrisburg threw $500 cash down onto the House floor to protest in favor of an anti-corruption bill. It was a direct action designed to move a bill that would make it illegal to give gifts, including cash gifts, to state legislators. And so this is a nice political cartoon that came out that kind of shows the action itself and highlights the injustice that March on Harrisburg was highlighting there. creative tension. When we can force the encounter, dramatize the injustice, and create tension, we're on the right path here. This is a quote from Dr. King from the letter from a Birmingham jail. He wrote, "Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and establish such creative tension that a community that has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. I must confess that I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly worked and preached against violent tension, but there is a type of constructive tension that is necessary for growth. The purpose of direct action is to create a situation so crisis-packed that it will inevitably open the door to negotiation." So part of what you're trying to do with the nonviolent direct action is create a situation where there's so much tension that to break the tension, the power structure might just do the right thing. They'll at least have to address the issue and hopefully do the right thing. To break the tension, they have to react to it. They have to respond to it. So this could mean occupying an office, creating such havoc inside of the state capitol that they have to concede something in order to get through the day. You're creating such a creative tension that has to be dealt with. It can't continue. It's too tense. It's too tense. And when we are forcing the encounter, dramatizing the injustice, and creating tension, we're going to create polarization. We're going to polarize the power structure and the public. And that's part of what makes a direct action a direct action. We create, next slide here. We create a clear good, bad decision for the power structure, do the right thing or do the wrong thing, and we force them into one of those two choices. Politicians and others who we may be protesting tend to be pretty good at sitting on the fence, as is most of the public, is pretty good at sitting on the fence. And nonviolent direct actions knock people off the fence. They make them make a decision, whether for good or for bad, but they make them take a position and deal with the issue. Intense and this is something that can seem kind of scary a little bit. In our culture, we're told to shy away from things like tension or encountering each other. We're so isolated, we tend to shy away from just basic encounters. We're told that polarization is a scary word, right? Because who likes tension? Who likes polarization? Who likes encounter? Right? These are tough things. But to really flip it on its head, these are positive terms because when things are tense and that tension needs to be broken, right? There's a chance for change. You can't expect crops without doing some plowing. It's gotta be tense. You got to polarize. When you polarize, you create an opening where you can finally make a decision, where something can actually happen. And just a way to kind of think about this is, I like the metaphor of the forge and the iron rod, and the idea that society most often is like an iron rod. It's very rigid, it's unbending, it's stiff, it's tough to bend. But when the fire is turned on, when the fire is on in the forge, then you can bend that iron into anything. You can reshape it. And it's only when the heat is up that you can actually forge a new society, that you can actually create something new. And so people who do nonviolence, we look at polarization, tension, at the fire turning on as an opportunity. It's a time to actually change something. Because only when the fire is on, when the heat is up, can you do what Isaiah and Micah were talking about 2,600 years ago here. Beat your swords into plowshares and your spears into pruning hooks. Right? That's the goal. That's the idea. And when you can create that tension and that polarization, you can actually forge a new society. You can reshape things. So those are some key features of nonviolent direct action. And I'm going to pass it over to Nijmi to go through possibly the most key feature of nonviolent direct action campaigning, which is base building and leadership development.
Thank you, Rabbi Michael. Yeah, so we have a saying in our movement that everything we do to develop leaders. And nonviolent direct action is no different. There's a lot of elements to doing this kind of action, taking this kind of action. And we have to remember that ultimately all of our work is to develop ourselves as leaders, unite ourselves as leaders, and grow our ranks. And so we know that until we make the ultimate change that we need, the deepest level of change that we need, which is to change the structure that we live in, our actions are going to be for the purpose of doing the kinds of things that Rabbi Michael was talking about, right? Dramatizing and creating tension and forcing the encounter. But they're chiefly going to be actually about developing ourselves as leaders so that we can grow our movement and really develop and deepen our clarity too. And so there's a lot of leadership development that's involved in this kind of action, right? It takes commitment. It takes really serious commitment because it is a risk. It takes confidence, right? To be able to take that risk, to be able to trust the people that are around you. So it takes a lot of deep relationship building in the lead up to doing this kind of thing. It takes discipline because all of these actions have a plan that we intend to carry out. And so we have to stay true to that plan, right? We have to stay true to what our plan is in order to carry it out. Um, and it also helps us develop clarity around what we're really up against, what are the forces that are behind the situation that we're dealing with? What are the structures and also then the people who represent those structures. And what are the forces that are arrayed against us, right? I know in Harrisburg during the 40 days of action, there were many different kinds of state actors who we were coming into contact with. The Capitol Police, the Harrisburg Police, the state police, and these are, representatives of, the ruling class. So there's a lot of leadership development, and we have to keep that as a huge goal, right? We're not just doing things just to do them. We're not doing things to check off a box. We're doing things so that we can grow our ranks and develop clear, committed, competent, and connected leaders and maintain and grow our political independence as well. So all of these aspects of leadership development are very incredibly important for us. And I know that Minister Tammy Rosing just got on the call of the Freedom Church of the Poor and the National Union of the Homeless, and also a tri-chair of the Pennsylvania Poor People's Campaign. And Tammy, we wanted to ask you to share a little bit about your first time doing nonviolent civil disobedience and what that was like for you, and what are some of the things that you faced in doing that.
Yes, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I can never tell exactly with these earbuds. Yeah, thank you. So Nidja already introduced me. Glad to be on with y'all. Yeah, so I did my first act of nonviolent civil disobedience or direct action type arrestable event. It was in 2018. It was part of the launch of the Poor People's Campaign, the 6 weeks of action, and it was on the right to like health and a healthy planet or people of profits. I remember there's banners hanging across. That visual, for anybody who hasn't seen that photo, you've got to see it. There's awesome banners hanging off the side of the building. I can say that as someone who has gone through like the struggle that I had with the criminal justice system, I learned at a very young age that it was I just don't trust cops like at all. There's something about that level of fear once cops are on you, right? Like the power's in their hands, right, in that moment. And so for me, agreeing to do this as folks in the different member orgs, like even Put People First, because that's what I'm a member of also, is Put People First PA. And as a member of that org, this is, I was taking action on that for this particular topic of the week of action. And I also gave a speech that day, which I think honestly helped me just get grounded in what we were there to do. And I will say that it wasn't a decision made lightly, for me at least, and that it came from a couple different sessions of us talking about it, planning it, being very strategic, I remember we even had a call, I think, with somebody who either was a lawyer or has some sort of like could answer a bunch of questions. And as someone who, was once on probation, and I just kept saying, what would these charges look like? Like, what would these whatever? Like, could I be in trouble if I have this going on? Like, I went in with I wanted all those questions answered. Um, and I did it. And I was nervous the whole time, but like the fact that it was happening for this like good cause, so to speak, and that I wasn't doing it alone. There was a group of us, and I'm not always one to necessarily sing, but I found myself as they were taking me away that I was actually singing one of the movement songs. And before this campaign fails, we'll all go down to jail. Like that was one of the lines in the song. And I was singing that as we were taking it away. I just felt like that inspired. Um, and the fact that it was well planned out was a key factor for me of wanting to do this. The fact that all my questions were answered, the plan from seeing it through and what was going to happen after the fact, like having that all clear going in was a big factor for me. And I'm ultimately glad that I did it. It helped me. It helped me experience something that I needed to get over some things. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Really appreciate your testimony. And yeah, looking forward to hearing more testimonies from more of us as we go forward with this course. And also, really, part of the purpose of this course is to do for us here some of what happened in the lead up to those actions, right? Which is to answer questions and to get clarity and to dispel anything that isn't clear. So that's the purpose of this course. And so I know that we hope that this series will help put more folks in a good frame of mind, to be able to make a decision about something like this as we move forward. So thank you very much for sharing that and the impact that that had on you. And so I just want to say, as we continue on, that we are, I think, for folks who were part of our last series in March, we had a 5-part series on holding all power holders accountable. And this is one of the slides that we actually looked at in that series. I think we're familiar with the fact that in the Poor People's Campaign, we talk about 140 million people in this country who are poor or near poor. And why do we talk about this when we're talking about nonviolent direct action? Well, we're talking about it because, as I mentioned before, we really want to start to understand that, and Minister Tammy Rosing says this a lot, that the powers that be are taking away our ability to live and then criminalizing us for it, right? They're making it impossible to survive. And, we're not here just as folks who are even lifting up the crimes of one party or another. We hold all power holders accountable. So I don't want anyone to think I'm just talking about the person who's currently in office. I mean, we just talked about Governor Wolf didn't reinstate general assistance. We've talked about the 25 million people who already lost their health care under the last administration, even as we face continuing and deepening attacks. So what we're really up against is a system and a state that is, denying us health care, in which we can't afford housing. There's no county in the state of Pennsylvania in which you can afford a 2-bedroom apartment on a full-time minimum wage salary. There's no county. There's no apartment. The denial of health care, the criminalization of homelessness. The Supreme Court over this summer passed a case called Grants Pass versus Johnson. I was talking about that in the chat, that criminalizes us for being unhoused, even when there's no other available shelter. So, and we looked at this slide as well, right? That for the last 50 years, wages have been stagnant while our productivity as a society and as workers has gone up. So we are able to produce what we need, but we are not actually paid wages that will allow us to live and to survive, even though our work is more productive than ever. And we know where that extra wealth is going. It's going straight to the top. And so what we're really up against, and then we know as we continue forward, we can keep going. Just a couple of slides here that illustrate some of these things because, again, nonviolent direct action and the tactics that we're talking about are, as Michael Bagdis Canning said in the beginning, they're about our time, place, and conditions, but also recognizing that there's been a lot of changes in our economy and our society over the last 50 years. And this slide, which we also looked at in our last series in March, looks at the price changes for all of the things that we need on the left. And so it shows that the price of education, the price of housing, the price of healthcare, the price of food, all have risen dramatically. But we know that wages have stagnated for 50 years. And the fourth technological revolution is automating many jobs and will continue to bring about structural unemployment. And there's a headline at the bottom of the slide that said Goldman Sachs predicts 300 million jobs will be lost or degraded by artificial intelligence. Now that's around the world, but it's certainly already made a big impact in this country and will continue to do so. And so we're not in a period where we're looking at these historical examples, which are incredibly powerful. A lot of us have studied history of the labor movement and labor strikes, and we understand that as a class, increasingly, not exclusively, but increasingly, our point of intervention is not necessarily in the workplace. The workplace struggles are still incredibly important, but as things are changing in our economy and in society and in technology, uh, more of us are coming up directly against the state for our basic survival needs. And so those are going to be places, and they already have been, as we've been showing examples of the housing takeovers and other examples of taking action around our needs. We're still part of the working class. It doesn't matter if you are unemployed, if you're a caregiver, if you don't have a job, you are still part of the working class. If you need to survive without being independently wealthy or being a billionaire. So we are going to have to deal with these struggles for survival. And we will be forced into the position of having to break the law to survive. We already are. And our struggle is to make that into political acts, to collectivize those struggles, to elevate them with political education, with unity, right, to build them into something that has independent political power in this country, right? And the unity of this massive group of people, 140 million people who are poor or near poor. So that's our task, and that's one of the reasons why this session is incredibly important. So I want to keep going and just share another historical example, which has another tie back to survival struggles, and that is the Young Lords. And this is now 55 years ago, so 20 years before the homeless union housing takeovers. The Young Lords did a hospital takeover of Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx. You can see this is a picture on the left of their 10-point health program in English and Spanish. And on the right is actually a mobile X-ray unit that they took over, and actually started to run and to bring it into poor communities and working class communities. So in 1970, the Young Lords, which was started in Chicago and then moved to gained more folks in New York as well and started a chapter in New York, and eventually became part of the original Rainbow Coalition, which was the Black Panther Party, the Young Lords, and the Young Patriots, which was Black, Hispanic, Latino, and white, poor whites, folks in Chicago. So if folks may have heard of Fred Hampton, who was one of the people in the Black Panther Party who really built that unity across those lines of division. But the Young Lords had a chapter in New York, and they were organizing. And one of the things that they could see was that health and healthcare were incredibly deeply important issues, and that their communities were being denied healthcare. And so healthcare was a very fundamental part of their organizing. And they were already organizing around Lincoln Hospital. They were organizing and connecting with healthcare workers. They were knocking doors. They were doing community organizing. They were doing people's clinics, free clinics in different parts of the city. And so they were doing all of this work, and it all then led up to this takeover of Lincoln Hospital. At the time, Lincoln Hospital it was open, it was a functioning hospital, but it was delivering very subpar care. And so they came in, took over the hospital as an act of civil disobedience, right? Not as an act of, permanently kind of running the hospital, but to dramatize the situation, as we've talked about, and to make demands, some of which they did achieve through this process, and ended up actually getting out of the situation by just dressing up as doctors and nurses and leaving when everyone left the hospital at the end of the day. So that's kind of how they ended up getting out of the situation safely. And so if you go to the next slide, I'll just mention too, this was one of their graphics on the left. It says seize the hospitals. And on the right, it says that 26 hospitals closed in Pennsylvania in the last 5 years. So this is still, the struggle on healthcare, as on all these different areas, has only gotten more intense, and it's only gotten worse for the working class in the last 50 years. And so I just, wanted to highlight that 26 hospitals have closed in this state alone in the last 5 years. And there's a image down below that of one of our members of Put People First PA, Jamie, with a sign that says, "We get sick, you get rich." And this was outside of a healthcare profiteer. I think during the pandemic, we were doing this action. So just to say that the situation with our hospitals, private equity in our hospitals, hospital closures, mergers, both for-profit and nonprofit, is still a great emergency in our state, and an area where, we need to continue to take action. So with all that being said, I think we want to open up a few minutes here to hear discussion points, thoughts, questions, experiences maybe others want to share with doing nonviolent direct action, or questions that are coming up for you, considering the fact that we do have 2 more sessions, so we're not going to go over and get into everything tonight. This has primarily been an introduction and using examples, definitions, and historical pieces to kind of illustrate what we're talking about. So yeah, what is on everyone's mind that's here? Okay, Aaron, I see your hand.
I had a quick question, then a comment. What's the gentleman's name? Butter something, that is the musician that you were featuring on those videos. I love him. He's on Freedom Church all the time.
Yeah, Jacob Butterly is the person you're thinking of.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, he is so awesome. He is a great musician, a beautiful soul. Every time he's on Freedom Church, we just love it. We have Freedom Churches. Kairos Center is a partner. So like Repairs of the Breach, and then the Kairos Center make up Poor People's Campaign. And Liz Theo Harris does the Kairos Center. And every Wednesday and Sunday we have a Zoom service. So if anybody's interested in that, check it out. I just love what you guys are doing. I met so many of you in Washington, D.C. in 2023. And the Oklahoma Poor People's Campaign isn't super active. So I try to check this out as much as I can. I'm so inspired by you guys. Just thank you so much for what you're doing, and keep it up.
Thank you so much, Erin. That's awesome. We love to be in touch with you. So thank you. And thank you for lifting up Freedom Church of the Poor. Maybe we can put the link to that in the chat and invite people to take part in that as well. As you mentioned, the Bible study that happens on Wednesday and then the regular service every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And Tammy Rosing, who I mentioned before, is a minister with the Freedom Church of the Poor. And we have other folks who are also ministers with the Freedom Church here. So thank you so much for being here. What else?
I just want to appreciate, I know like in PPF we talked about a little bit before at a previous gathering about young lords. They watched this video clip and stuff, and it made me think about as we were organizing here around the closure of St. Joseph Hospital. Although its last name was UPMC Pinnacle, that's UPMC was closing it. Before that, Lancaster Regional, but it was strategic to call it St. Joe's. And I remember, there were some folks, especially among the unhoused community, that wanted to take it over. They wanted to occupy it, but we just didn't have the experience or the manpower, I don't think, to pull that off when they have an on-site security guard, right? But just admiring that desire was there, right? Like that people wanted to fight that hard for that, and I love the visual of the hanging the banner down, that graphic, that picture that was drawn or whatever. I just thought that was amazing. So I'm just like sharing, I'm just uplifting and sharing what's been shared and just appreciating that.
Right on, Tammy. Thank you. What else?
I just want to welcome Jessica. Sister Betty and I met Jessica at a restaurant that her parents own. And I'm just really glad she's here tonight. Just really warmed my heart. I saw her yesterday. It's a local restaurant here in our area. And one of the things I love about it is you just never know. Like everywhere we go, we base build. Joe, and I'm saying we're talking about what's going on in the movement. We're talking about what's going on in our country and what we're doing, what our place is, and how we're trying to change things. And it just touches my heart to see her here tonight. And I'm just really thankful. I'm thankful for put people first. I really am, because it's really changed my way of thinking. And I just really want to welcome her, and looking forward to working with her and getting more involved in the movement together, because it takes all of us. We need a lot of people, a lot of Martins, like we always say. And I'm just really glad that she's here tonight.
Right on, Robin. Thank you and welcome, Jessica. So glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you, Robin.
And I see your hand, Rin.
Hello, I'm Rin. I just wanted to know, is there going to be information about like how to get more involved? Um, I'm starting a seminary degree this fall, and I'm going to actually have more time on my hands because I'm going to be quitting my job to do that. Um, are you going to have like specific things that we can like sign up for, or?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for asking. Yeah, we will be including ways to get involved directly with the Poor People's Campaign and with members organizations in the Poor People's Campaign too. So yes,
Awesome.
we will do that in our follow-up emails and also like at the end of our next couple of sessions too. So thanks for asking.
Okay, great. Thanks.
What else? Anyone from our team want to add anything else? Andrea, Julissa, Michael, Tammy, or anyone from any of our that is already involved in our organizations want to share anything?
Yeah, I I'm like, I don't know if I have a formed thought, but just appreciate all this. And there were some examples that I'd never heard of before. And um, yeah, really thinking about the like leadership development piece of it. And yeah, I haven't done direct action like with our movement. I've sort of been invited in other groups, but even like not in the so it was interesting but I really felt like doing something a little like risky that like gets my adrenaline up and doing it with other people and like with a really clear plan just made me feel so much closer and then it like wasn't a context where we that group was like trying to continue to build ongoing like permanently organized communities, so it was felt a little wasted in some ways, but I can really see the potential of like it's kind of just like siblings in arms, but not in arms, but like, in nonviolent arms of just like, wow, we really got through this like actual confrontation with the state and with power holders together. So I'm excited to do it with PPF and our movement. And I mean, I wish again, I'm like, I don't think we're there, but there's this hospital that just closed in Delaware County after like other hospitals have closed. And I just like, I want to occupy this hospital. And like, I don't think we can, but I'm hungry for it. And it would be so powerful to so many people in the community.
Yeah, right on, Debbie. Thank you. Cool. Aaron, I see you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had one more question. I talked to Savina Martin about starting a national union of the homeless in Tulsa, and I know she's really busy, but I'd like if I know Tammy is involved with that as well. If anybody could email me at tulsa5051@gmail.com, I'd really appreciate it. I've got a 5051 organization here, but I'd really like to get something like the Nonviolent Medicaid Army or like a Put People First Tulsa or something like that that's got, national weight behind it. That's, has a good program, a good mission statement. So I'm not just, free balling it out there. So if anybody's interested, I'll put my email in the chat.
Fantastic. Yeah, please put it in the chat. We'll definitely follow up with you. Thank you so much, Aaron. Andrea.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button while sharing my screen, but yeah, I have kind of one thought that's still like unformed, but I'm thinking back to Robin, what you just said about how organizing with Put People First has like really transformed your way of thinking and just kind of view and analysis of the system. And just my first thought was like, we have to organize, and that means, right, we're not just mobilizing bodies, but we need to move hearts and minds in order to win against this system that is keeping us sick and keeping a very small few group of people incredibly wealthy. And just that we have to build leaders who can take on this system that's killing us, right? A system that is not only producing poverty, right, but criminalizing poverty, right, criminalizing the conditions that they are creating. And just this idea that we know people in power are not responsive to us, right? We know they kind of do the bidding of Wall Street and ultimately are sending us into this rapid race to the bottom, which Nijmi, you touched upon in your section. And I just keep thinking about, amidst all of this going on right now, this race to the bottom, a lot of kind of like deep polarization, there's also this big opportunity to really build the power and unity of our class, right? There's over like 140 million poor and dispossessed folks, and it's a time for us to get in step and kind of build leadership across these manufactured lines of division and just center political education and kind of every tactic we have, including strategic nonviolence. So I just keep thinking about how the school is a struggle and the struggle is a school. But sorry, a little bit of an unformed thought, but that's where my head is at now.
That was great, Andrea. Thank you. What else?
Well, for me, being with Put People First and ACT UP and Poor People's Campaign has really transformed me into being a person that I've always wanted to be, and that's speaking out and participating and doing the things that needs to be done to get done, demanding, not asking, organizing, and being a part of what's going on. I know a lot of times I can't participate, but I'm still there when you need me. And I just like how y'all motivated me to become the person that I am today.
That was beautiful.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think this is very important, because this is part of what we do, right? When we prepare to do nonviolent direct action with each other, getting to know each other, getting to understand what motivates each other, how we came into this, what our life experiences have been. That's what helps us deepen those connections and helps us to go into actions where we are taking some risks and feel like we can trust the people around us, right? As well as educating ourselves and really doing, deep political education as well. And so this is what we're doing here is exactly the kind of thing that we do before we take action together, right? We get to know each other, we get to understand each other, we testify, right? We share about ourselves and we study what's happening and who we're really up against and what the situation and the scenario is. So this is actually what we're doing here. And so I just want to see if there's anything else that folks want to say before we wrap up tonight.
When is the next meeting? Is it next Monday?
Great question. I think we have that coming up. There we go. So our next, actually, I passed to you, Andrea. That's a good segue.
Yeah, so our next class will be on Monday, June 2nd at 6:30, same Zoom link. So not this upcoming Monday, but the Monday afterwards. And then originally, I think Jalissa touched on this earlier, but this was originally going to be a two-part class, but we extended it, so it's going to be a three-part class. So the third class will be on Monday, June um 9th, I believe, Monday, June 9th at 6:30. And so we'll make sure to include that in the email going out tomorrow. We'll have a recording of this class. We'll also include in there the 5-week course we did back in March, which Nijmi referenced earlier, how to hold all power holders accountable. It's a great kind of deep dive into the Pennsylvania legislature and how to navigate it. And we it's a really great 5-week class. So we have that on YouTube. So we'll include those links. And then we'll also include some links to some further reading for folks and some other videos. So we'll include a link to It's Not Enough to Be Angry, written by Willie Baptist. And then we're also going to include a link to a Medium blog that dives into one of those actions in our 40 days of action we first restarted the PA Poor People's Campaign back in 2018. So that'll be included in there as well as a video about the housing takeovers with the National Union of the Homeless as well. So I think that's it for next steps. Stay tuned for an email, and then also we post on the discussion board to an Action Network. So feel free to just post how you're feeling, how you're processing the information on there. It's a good way to talk with other folks. And then also to our base building team, we'll be reaching out to everyone who is taking this class. So you'll be getting either a text or an email from some members of our base building team. So Tammy on this call and Robin, they co-lead the PA Poor People's Campaign base building team. So stay tuned for some messages from them and feel free to reflect with them, how the class has been for you so far. And then I think I'm passing it back to Tammy now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do here.
Do you want to close this out, Tammy, with Forward Together?
Oh, sure. I didn't know if you wanted me to read the quote first or I see a quote up, so I'll just do that. Yeah. So closing out, got it. If we do not act, we shall surely be dragged down the long, dark, and shameful corridors of time reserved for those who possess power without compassion, might without morality, and strength without sight. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Sorry, just taking it in for a second. I just want to share like part of what got me into this movement that really solidified me was learning about a truth of Martin Luther King and his pivot to fighting for human rights and organizing the original Poor People's Campaign, uniting people across races, poor folk, right? Which is what our movement's about today, coming together across all lines of division. And that's not what I was taught, and that's not what I hear people echo every MLK Day, every single year. It's like they erase that history, they keep it from us. And so just taking into that quote and taking in the great shoulders we leave on, right? Like hearing from about the young lords, whether it be MLK, young lords, or others, right? Like just we stand on their shoulders, we take lessons from them. We have picked up the torch and we are carrying this forward, right? And we're not going to win unless we come across these lines of division. We're not going to win if we don't move forward together in step. Thinking about what I hear Willie Baptist say of you can be moving with all the velocity and speed, right? But if you're not going in the right direction, you're not going to get there. And I hear Kristen with, how about that scene from Finding Nemo when they're all caught in that fishnet and they're jumping around like crazy, pushing in all different directions. Nothing's happening. But Nemo leads the way and says, we got to go in the same direction with the same velocity at the same time. And they took down that net and they took down that ship and they gained their freedom, right? And so as we go into this call and response chant, I want us to like take all of that in. This is a movement we're building. This is not just a moment. This is not just one organization, right? We are building a movement to come together across all fronts of struggle, across all lines of division, to restructure society so it can meet the needs of us everyday people. It's not about taking away from one to give to another, right? We're talking about all of us deserve this right to live, right? So the call and response, I'm going to say forward together. And I want y'all to say not one step back. And we're going to do it 3 times, right? So let's get ready. Folks, come off mute. I know it's awkward on Zoom, but let's make it happen. Forward together.
Not
one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Now, this last time around, I want you guys to like bring it up into your diaphragm, feel it in your gut, wake up your cats, shock your neighbors. Forward together.
Not one step back.
All right.
Thank you.
Wow.
Tammy, check your email.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank
See
you
you.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
It's good to see you,
Bye-bye.
Sister Betty.